Party people, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. I am really excited about this layout today. This is my second spread for Story Kit Crush using the Watch Story Kits from Ali Edwards. And if this is your first time at a Story Kit Crush video, pretty much the premise is my friend Krystal and I make videos every Friday where we try to use up one of the kits in our stash in the efforts of getting them out of our baskets of shame and on to layout. So in February, we crushed the Give Story kit, and this month we are crushing Watch. And inevitably, I was going to be telling a story about what I was watching on TV. And so for this page, I decided to come out of the pockets, come out of 6x8, and work on 9x12. So I ended up with two spreads for this page, one 9x12 layout and one 6x12 piece with my words. And what I decided to do is do what I do best, which is make flip out elements. I love having interactive bits in my scrapbooking. And if you're not new here, you've seen me do this a number of times where I add a flip element to my page. But what I did was I picked 3 shows, which is really hard when you really like TV, like I do. So I picked 3 shows. I picked Inuyasha, Supernatural, and Nailed It. And I picked them for 3 specific reasons. So the reason I picked Inuyasha was the first anime I ever watched. I was 13, 14 when I was first introduced to anime, and Inuyasha was the anime I started with, and it all went downhill from there. The reason I picked Supernatural was because Supernatural was what I watched when I first moved out of my parents' house. I moved out when I was 21, 22. I was too young. In hindsight, I was too young to be out on my own. And I was lonely a lot of the time because I grew up in a family of 5 and my sister and I shared a room. So it was always people around, and I went from being surrounded by, the noisy bunch that I came from to all of a sudden being by myself. And so Supernatural was what I did because there were like 14 seasons at the time. And every day I came home, I would put on Supernatural, close my bedroom door, hide under the covers. And that's what got me through a really tough time in my life. And then the other show I picked was Nailed It because we all need something silly to laugh at. And Nailed It is what Joshua and I watch when we're having, a rough day. We come home, we put on the same episodes we've watched a million times. We know all of Nicole Byer's one-liners by heart. And so those are the shows I chose to document. And since I had all those fun flip out TVs, you know what I thought this layout needed? Some mixed media. If you aren't familiar with Laura Wanzik, she is on Ali's creative team with me, and she likes to do stuff where she integrates mixed media into her memory keeping, and I'm really inspired by her projects because I love mixed media, but I don't mix it with my, storytelling every now and then. I do it a lot in my 12x12 scrapbooking, but I don't really bring it into my stories, and I figured, why not, So I decided to pull out my 3-inch circle jelly plates. This plate came in a pack of a bunch of smaller jelly plates. It came with a circle, a square, and a triangle. I will, as always, link everything I can find in the description box. And there we go. I pulled out 4 colors of the Dina Wakley heavy body acrylic paint. So I have on my desk, I had cheddar, I had lemon, blushing, and Sedona. And I was inspired by the color palette in the Watch Story kit, which is kind of like corals and yellows. Those are the colors that I wanted to pull out. And I won't make you watch me do a whole page of these, but I ended up doing 3 pages of these circles that I then punch out with my hole punch. And I'm just using my brayer, and I'm doing a mix of things. I am applying paint directly to the jelly plates. And then when I have a bunch of extra paint on my brayer, I go straight from the brayer to the jelly plate without adding extra paint. And that gives me a bunch of different textures in my circles. It gives me circles that are like super covered in paint. And then it gives me a few circles where they're like blank spots where the paint is skipping. The other thing I do is I take one of the jelly plate marking tools. And on some of them, I write the word watch over and over. Some of them, I just kind of do some scribbles. Some of them I did, like that last one, I kind of did something that looked like waves. And I just make a bunch of these circles using these colors. And I tried to mix and match, so I ended up getting some colors that look really orange, some of them that look a little bit more coral, some that look a little red. In hindsight, I wish that I had a few that were just yellow. And the only way for me to do that would have been to clean my brayer. And once I started with this, I kind of just, if you haven't played with a jelly plate before, I highly recommend it. It is really soothing to just pull out a jelly plate and throw paint on it and just do mono printing. And if you're not, like, I've done full backgrounds with my jelly plate, which I've shown on this channel. But if you're, if that's not your cup of tea, if you don't want to do a whole background of mono printing, you can do what I'm doing now, which is make little prints and then punch them out and use that on your background. So if you're intimidated by the idea of having a whole bunch of paint on your page, this is a really easy way to make mono printing accessible. And honestly, like I said, once you pull out your jelly plate, you are going to be addicted. It's really hard once I start printing to stop. Like here I made 3 pages and I was like, Tashiana, you have to finish your layout. You can't do this forever. Put down the paint and the plate. So if you've never played around with jelly printing, I highly recommend you give it a try. So like I said, the jelly plate circle was 3 inches, and I punched out those circles using a 2.5-inch punch, and then I go back to my layout. And I had every intention of using that watch banner across the top of my page. That was just a journal card that I cut out the middle from and then repeated the color on opposite sides. And then once I started putting my paint circles down, I realized it was completely the wrong color. So you'll see at some point I just go, nope, and I throw it off my desk, which I am 100% okay with doing. When I start my layouts, I tend to start my layouts with an idea in mind, I decide, like I sketch out a general design for my page, and I try to figure out what I want to do and what story I want to tell, right? So I knew I wanted to tell the story about what I was watching. And I knew that I wanted to do some flip-up elements, and I knew I wanted to play with my jelly plates. So I thought that that title would be an okay title for my page. It turns out to not be okay. That doesn't break my heart to throw stuff away. And I know that that's sometimes a barrier to people, that they pull out all these bits and pieces for their pages, and they don't know how to go, this isn't working anymore, and how to throw it away. That has never been something I have an issue doing. If it is not fitting the design, I like to have my pages be organic, right? And I think sometimes my pages make themselves. So I'll have an idea in mind, but sometimes things kind of happen the way they happen. Like I had every intention of putting down these circles in groups of 3. So that worked out. But when I had started it, I didn't think about putting things off the page. And then when I started doing it, I really liked I always like how things look when they interact with the edges of the page. So once I started it, I was like, hey, that's really cool. And so I let 2 of my edges interact with the page. So then when I went to the second side, I let, again, 2 things interact with the edge of the page. And I personally like the way that looks. That might not be your cup of tea, but that's something that I enjoy having in my spreads. So I guess my encouragement to you is to kind of like let it happen and be a little bit more fluid when it comes to your making. It's not like we don't have all the answers as soon as we start the page. And I think part of the fun is seeing what happens when the glue hits the paper and you start putting stuff down. And so I, stick down all my circles. I made my jelly circles on Basil cardstock. It is my favorite cardstock. Also, like I said, I've said it a few times, it holds up well to mixed media, so it is a good cardstock if you're going to be putting any sort of paints and stuff on it. The good thing about acrylic paints, especially with the jelly plate, is if you apply it in a thin enough layer, it dries really quickly, and so you don't have to worry about the paint having time to buckle and warp. So I decided to add some more texture to the background because why not? So I pull out this stencil from Vicki Boutin. I don't even know if this is available anymore, but the first few times that Vicki Boutin did stencils, she did them on this like green color in sets of 3. And I remembered I had this one that was just a bunch of circles. It is now completely stained because I didn't clean off the paint in time. So I'm going to have to go put it in a bucket with some rubbing alcohol and get the extra paint off of it. But I normally use it with watercolor and with Distress Oxides. But I thought it would be fun since there is this darker color in the Watch Story Kit. I'm not sure if it's black. I'm not sure it's navy. But I knew that there was a dark color. And I like having something dark on my pages to add a bit of contrast. And this stencil just happened to have a bunch of circles in different sizes and different patterns. So I just took a foam blending tool with a little bit of the paint color that I'm using right now is Night, also from Dina Wakley. And I just bounce it through the stencil. And this helps you get like a really light layer. And you also get gradation and interest in the color that comes through the stencil. Like it's not a perfect stenciling by any stretch of the imagination. I am just bouncing it through the stencil trying to overlap where the edge of my circles hits the edge of my paper. So you see pretty much everywhere I put the circles is where the edge of my jelly plated circles interact with the edge of my page. And I really like how that looks. And then I'm like, you know what, this page needs more texture, because unless this is your first time here, you probably already know this, but Tatiana is 100% more is more scrapbooker. So I grab that TV stamp that's in the Watch Story stamp, and my scrapbook.com white ink. I talked about this ink on my channel before. If you are looking for a white ink, the scrapbook.com ink is 100% the ink you want. And I just messily stamp this all over my page. I intentionally did not use my stamper's secret weapon because I wanted it to be messy stamping. So I also purposefully stamped where two places where the circles interacted with each other and when the circles interacted with the edge of the page. Because then the stamp gets kind of bumpy and irregular, and you can still see that it's TVs, but it's not perfect TVs like it would have been if I had stamped straight on, like a surface. So I hit that with my heat tool because the white ink does take some time to dry. And now I work on building my layout. Like, my background's done. I think it looks super fun just with the color, with the orange and the red and the navy and the white. I think this is a super fun page just to play with to begin with. And so I used some of the scrapbook.com foam roll of tape to add some tape to the back of my TVs, just because I want some dimension on my TVs and I kind of want to pop them off my page. This page is obviously going to live outside of the page protector. So I'm probably going to do one of two things to put it in my album. I will attach it to a clear piece of acetate and punch holes in that, or I will put the holes directly in the page and put it into my album. I have no issue doing stuff like that. That is not something that bothers me, and I do a lot of my work outside of the page protector anyway. So I've stuck down all my TVs, and I'm pointing out that place where I got a little overzealous with my blue paint, and now there is a blue splotch right at the top of my layout. So now I got to be creative with a title. And I go back and forth about what I want to do with my title. You're going to see a few incarnations of it before I finally get down to what my title actually ends up being. But I go back and forth a little bit because I didn't know what I wanted to do for a title. I didn't want to, for a second, I played around with the idea of turning back on my computer and turning on my silhouette and die cutting the word watch in Allie's handwriting. But I don't like stopping when I've already started working. Like, once I've hit my groove and I've hit a good pace, I don't want to stop what I'm doing to turn on my computer and do something else. So you'll see I come up with something pretty creative that I actually like a lot, and it works out as a title. So for my vellum, which is what my journaling is on, so I guess I should tell you, underneath my TVs, it says favorite episode, and it just has my favorite episodes that I picked. So with the Supernatural Nailed It, I was able to fit 7 episodes. And with Inuyasha, because some of the episodes are too long, I was only able to fit 5. But I picked my top episodes. Mind you, Supernatural's on season 1,000. So it was really hard to pick my top episodes. But I picked my favorite episodes. And then on my journaling, I wrote about why I liked the TV show. Like, I'll tell you, for example, for Inuyasha, I wrote, one of the reasons Inuyasha will always have a place in my heart is it was my first real foray into anime of every kind. Before this show, anime wasn't even on my radar, and then I met a girl who had a thing for fan fiction. Spoiler alert, I have never kicked that habit, and fan fiction has really evolved since 2004. And she introduced me to a silver-haired boy who was half human, half dog, demon, and a total dreamboat. I remember waiting up till 12:30 every day to watch Inuyasha before streaming and before you could buy them on DVD. And I remember starting in the middle of the plot and having no idea who the characters were, but loving them anyway. And I remember how good it felt the first time I watched the series from beginning to end. I will always be a fan, and I will always hold a special place in my heart for this show. And so that's what I did. I just wrote a little bit about each TV show and why I picked them for this layout. And then I stapled them using my tiny attacher to my background. I add a few cardstock stickers on the buttons on the TV just to add a little bit more color. And then I add the banner that says weekends are for this in the empty space on the top of the side of my layout that has my journaling. And I work on my title. So before I talk about my title, I just want to remind you that Krystal and I are posting videos every week for Story Kit Crush. I'm always super bad about linking her video in my description box. The link either breaks or I forget to do it. So I'm going to be extra vigilant this time about making sure that her video is linked in my description box so you can finish this one and head right over to see what she did. She did something really neat with these TVs last week. So after you watch her video for this week, go back and watch what she did last week because her video last week was really, really neat. So I add some chipboard that says I watch number 1, I watch number 2, and I watch number 3 over my TVs. And then I decide to just stamp the word watch on the bottom of a TV. Now you see, I had originally used the Mix Alpha to stamp out the word watch, so I thought that would be fun, but it is too big to fit on the TV. So I just decided to use the Sans Serif Alpha. These stamps are both from Ali Edwards. They were in stock sometime last week. I don't know if they're still in stock now, but they're just, the Mix Alpha is a really, really fun alphabet stamp that I don't think anyone has done. And then I use Pendleton, Tillamook, and Honeyman to stamp out the word watch, which is a red, orange, and yellow, just to repeat the colors that I already have going on in my spread. And I stamp it on the bottom of the TV because I know it's going to hang off my page and I have to eventually cut it off. I'm using my Stamper Secret Weapon, which is what I use all the time. I think you guys are probably sick about hearing me talk about this, but this thing is amazing, you guys. It is one of my favorite tools in my craft room. I don't know, like I lost it for so long that I forgot that I had it. And then when I pulled it back out again, I was just like, dude, how did I not use this for like months? Like I've been complaining about my stamping being terrible, and that's just because I wasn't using the tool that I had in my stash that was going to make it better. So anyways, so I stamp out the word watch using that red, orange, and yellow ink. I go red, orange, yellow, orange, red to repeat the colors in the spread. Put it on my page and then trim off the excess, cut it down. And then I think the only other thing I do is add a grade cardstock sticker that says TV time on the bottom of my TV, and that pretty much completes the spread. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had every intention of trying to talk through this, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't because the raw footage for this bad boy was an hour long, and there's no way, 1, you're watching me scrapbook for an hour, and 2, I have anything to say to you for a whole hour. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment, subscribe, and like. That was the wrong order. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you're so inclined. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you never miss a video, so you always see what I'm up to. And if you are crushing watch with us this month or crushing any of the story kits, please make sure you use the hashtag StoryKitCrush so I can see, and so Krystal can see, and so the whole community can see what you're up to. So again, that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Till next time, keep it crafty and have the best day, and I will see you around. Bye!